Hi, welcome to the Reach Daily Devotional. I'm Ellie Hart, I'm from Reach Derby, and I'm going to be speaking today from 1 Kings, the story of Solomon's famous wise ruling. But before we get to that, why don't you stop this video, click on the link which is above or below it, and just spend some time with the Lord in worship. I'm going to read to you now from 1 Kings chapter 3 verse 16. This happens really near the beginning of Solomon's reign. He makes some really unwise decisions, and then finally, in a moment of quite surprising wisdom, he realises his weakness. He realises that he really doesn't know how to do what he's doing, and he asks God for wisdom, and God grants him an abundance of wisdom. And this is the story that we're given to show us how wise Solomon has become. Of all of the times that Solomon gave a wise ruling, this is the one that they picked out and put in the scriptures for us to prove just how wise Solomon was. I'm going to read it to you now and you see what you think of it. Later, 2 women who were prostitutes came to the king and stood before him. One woman said, "Please, my lord, this woman and I live in the same house, and I gave birth while she was in the house. Then on the 3rd day after I gave birth, this woman also gave birth. We were together, there was no one else in the house, only the 2 of us were in the house. Then this woman's son died in the night because she lay on him. She got up in the middle of the night and took my son from beside me while your servant slept. She laid him at her breast and laid her dead son at my breast. When I rose in the morning to nurse my son, I saw that he was dead, but when I looked at him closely in the morning, clearly it was not the son that I had borne." But the other woman said, No, the living son is mine and the dead son is yours." The first said, "No, the dead son is yours and the living son is mine." And so they argued before the king. Then the king said, "One says, 'This is my son that is alive and your son is dead,' while the other says, 'Not so, your son is dead and my son is the living one.' So the king said, 'Bring me my sword.' And they brought a sword before the king. The king said, 'Divide the living boy in 2, then give half to one and half to the other.' But the woman whose son was alive said to the king, because compassion for her son burned within her, 'Please, my lord, give her the living boy. Certainly do not kill him.' The other said, 'It shall be neither mine nor yours. Divide it.' Then the king responded, 'Give the first woman the living boy. Do not kill him. She is his mother.' All Israel heard of the judgment that the king had rendered, and they stood in awe of the king because they perceived that the wisdom of God was in him to execute justice." I don't know how that story sits with you, but I find it quite difficult to hear with my modern ears as a story of great wisdom. We've got 2 women, not powerful women. They're prostitutes, probably not by their own choice. They're people who live alone, they have no families to defend them, and they're both here before the king, one desperate and one grieving. And here they are with a seemingly unsolvable problem. There's no DNA test that they can do, no scientific way they can determine whose child this is. And Solomon comes up with a solution, and it is a solution that works. The true mother is exposed. But there's something difficult in there for me. Are we saying that Solomon's great wisdom, the pinnacle of this abundant godly wisdom that he's been given, is the ability to trick a woman who is battered and grieving into admitting that she is indifferent towards this child? If this is just trickery, then it doesn't work for me. But as I've been considering it and pondering it and asking God about it, what Solomon's wisdom actually reveals that in the heart of a parent, compassion trumps justice. Compassion wins over my need for justice. This woman walks into the room, and what she wants from Solomon is a just judgment. What she wants is fairness. What she wants is her child back in her arms. But actually, in that moment, compassion for her child overrules her need for justice, and she would rather that the child lives than see it suffer and have justice. I think it's really interesting that the word that's used for compassion here, the compassion that burns in the heart of this mother, is the same word that God uses to describe God's self back in Exodus 34. I am gracious and compassionate, slow to anger and rich in loyal love. And actually we see this played out again and again through scripture, that many times God could have justly judged his people for their sin, for their idolatry, for their rejection of him, for when they have forsaken him and gone after other gods. And yet compassion comes through time after time after time, that when God's people cry out, that God responds in compassion. So how do we respond to this today? Well, I think one thing that we can take to our hearts is that we serve a God who is just but also compassionate, and that we can choose to be like him in the way that we treat others, that we can aspire to be people who are people of justice, but actually when it comes to our own justice, we'll allow it to be trumped by compassion for the people that we come in contact with, for the people that we're serving, because that's what God is like. And we can come again and be grateful to God that instead of treating us with justice, that he treats us with mercy, that compassion burns within him when he looks at us.